Welcome to the Grow Strong Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I interview business leaders who are committed to their own growth and the development of everyone on their team. If you enjoy my podcast, be sure to subscribe and rate it on your favorite podcast platform. Thanks for joining me today. I'm your host, Meredith Bell, and I love introducing you to people who are focused on their own growth and also the development of the people in their organizations. And I am very excited today to be able to bring to you someone who has done both of those things in spade. Scott Shute. Scott, welcome to my program.
Thanks very much for having me.
Well, I'm so excited to share you and who you are with my audience. So before we get into our conversation, let me introduce you to them in more formal detail. Scott's specialty is combining the lessons from ancient wisdom traditions with the practicalities of working in the modern world. His goal is to transform leaders and organizations from the inside out. He blends his experience as a Silicon Valley executive with his lifelong practice and passion as a wisdom seeker and teacher. In his most recent role at LinkedIn, Scott was the head of mindfulness and compassion programs. He's been a pioneer in creating mindfulness programs and advancing the discussion around how to operationalize compassion in the workplace. And he's the author of a fantastic book that we're going to be talking about today called The Full Body Yes. And I highly recommend every one of my listeners pick up a copy of this. I promise you will love it. And at the end of our conversation, if you haven't bought it yet, you will, because you will love what Scott has to say. Scott, this is so special to me because your book spoke to me on so many levels. And it's because of who you are. You know, your stories you wrote, the feeling that you put into it is all very special. And so what I would love for you to do before we dive into the book is talk a little bit about your journey. Where did you start in the work you're doing today, and how did it lead to a focus on mindfulness and compassion?
Sure. Well, thank you for the question. A little context. So I grew up on a farm in Kansas, a super rural place. It's like an hour to the nearest movie theater or fast food type of place. I'm the youngest of five, and I've always had this deep love of the divine. And I guess part of this journey started when I was 13. I came across a spiritual teaching that I'm still in love with. And that started this meditation or contemplation journey that I've had. And it's been a big part of my life, but I never talked about it at work, and so this other part of me is this work part. I grew up very much as I would say a competitor, and an achiever and wanting to do very well in life. And I did very well at lots of different things. And I ended up as a VP at LinkedIn. I was leading global customer operations, a team of, over 1,000 people all around the world. It was one of those 24/7 types of jobs. But still there was this tear of these two worlds, right? Now I'm talking about, well, how do you balance your ambition with your inner peace? But that's really the question I was asking myself for 30 years is how do you do that? How do you balance these two things? And for me, I finally got to this place about 6 or 7 years ago where I got to LinkedIn and I found that it'd be very open. Our CEO was talking about his own meditation practice using Headspace. And I thought, well, maybe this is a place that I could bring some of my practice in a completely secular and inclusive way to work. Because I didn't want my outside of work person and my inside of work person to be different. I wanted to be my whole self at work. I mean, isn't that what all of us want? But I wasn't there. And so long story short, I started by leading this one meditation session. And that first time on Thursday afternoon at 4:30 in the Heavenly Conference Room, which I thought was quite auspicious, there was one guy there. And Pardon me. And I'm sure that one guy was just as terrified as I was because I didn't ever see him again. But then it grew and it grew. The next week there were 3, and then there were 5, and it turned into a regular thing. And after a while, people knew that I did it. I was like the meditation exec. So I'd get invited to kick off the CFO's offsite with 400 finance people. He'd invite me to kick it off with a meditation. And it grew and grew. I was the executive sponsor for our mindfulness program. We didn't really have one. And so I created one with a bunch of help from volunteers. But for me, the turning point was almost 4 years ago now. Our CEO at the time gave the commencement address at Wharton and talked about compassion, right? If you're going to be successful in life, be compassionate, or at work, be compassionate. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. And the next day he's on TV, and this is all the reporters want to talk about is compassion in business. And I was ready for a change. I'd been doing this ops role for 6 years. And I thought, it's time. It's time for me to invest my career in this. It's also time for LinkedIn to invest in it, because essentially our CEO just told our 15,000 employees that compassion was the most important thing that they could do. But what does that even mean? And so I made a pitch to him and to our head of HR, and collectively we created this role, head of mindfulness and compassion programs, where my vision was to change work from the inside out. And the mission is by mainstreaming mindfulness and operationalizing compassion. So that's a little bit about, where I've been.
So let's break down some of those things that you just mentioned. This whole idea of bringing mindfulness into the workplace. What does that look like? And and let me just add, it's so important today because with what's been going on with COVID the last couple of years and people feeling overwhelmed and stressed, there's certainly a need for that. I can hear some of my listeners going, yeah, but what does that really look like? How do you actually bring mindfulness into the workplace? So describe that for us.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you painted the picture very well. There's a lot of statistics that are scary to me about the state of our mental well-being in America, at least. 85% of people say they've dealt with emotional burnout. 33%, about a third of us, are facing symptoms of anxiety or depression. And for me, the most scary of all is that in the last 30 days, 1 in 9 or 11% of Americans seriously considered taking their own life. These are from the CDC. Okay, so the challenge. When I think about bringing mindfulness, I think about it in its broadest sense around self-awareness. And there's lots of ways to get there. But one of the ways is around meditation, and doing meditation at work in a completely secular way. I mean, I and lots of people came at it from the spiritual angle, but everything we do at work is completely secular. And it could be breathing techniques. It could be, group meditations. Here's the types of things in our mindfulness program that we brought. Yes, we had something like 40 or 50 weekly meditation sessions around the globe for a company that's 15,000 people. We give everybody access to an app. There's lots of them like Headspace and others. We like the one called Wise at Work from our friends at Wisdom Labs. And then every year we would do a 30-day challenge around that app to get people excited about using it, a little gamification, a little friendly competition with yourself or with others. We would also bring in speakers. I have a speaker series that I left LinkedIn in September of 2021, but sometimes I still call it we. And just everything was designed to build this mainstreaming, this normality of mental exercise, mindfulness, and make it just as commonplace as physical exercise. Just to make it normal. Here's, essentially an older white man who is senior in the company meditating. That goes a long ways to creating a safe environment that says, this is what we do. Like, if you want to be successful here's part of the plan is like, help yourself be healthy. So those are some of the things, along with things like workshops on building resilience or workshops on growth mindset. We would even do weekend retreats or Friday retreats, pre-COVID. Those are some of the things on the mindfulness side and building a mindfulness program.
Mm-hmm. Before we get into the compassion piece, I want to look at your book for a minute
Sure.
because you had these four main sections, and I'd like to kind of zoom out and have
Yeah.
you explain why did you organize it the way you did?
Right. Okay. So I'll work from the back to the front. So I wanted to write a book about how can I be compassionate, right? This is what people want to know. How do I be a compassionate leader? How can I have compassion in the world? And as I started to break down the steps, I realized that 99% of me being compassionate is me first figuring out my own stuff, right? Getting out of my own way, handling my own mess. So there are three parts to that. The first part is to know yourself, to deeply know yourself. What's your story? What are your values? What are the things that trip you up? In work, we talk about personality tests, things like Myers-Briggs or the Enneagram or things like that. I've probably taken 15 of them. And each one of those is another part of the picture that fills in that says, do you really know who you are? Why do you make these decisions? That's a starting point. Because look, if I really understand myself, then I can start to understand other people. If I have no curiosity, I don't understand myself at all, then I'm not going to be very good at understanding anybody else. The second part of that journey is to love yourself. What does that mean? Well, it means to honor yourself. It means to take care of yourself. It's to realize there's more than meets the eye. But at the heart of it, it's really to recognize myself as something more than this bag of bones and to love that part of it and to love every part of the journey. And the idea then is if I can love myself, then I have a chance at loving other people or having goodwill towards other people. And the third part then is the hard part. It's taking responsibility. I call it the mastery of me. So once you know yourself, once you love yourself, there's nobody else to blame in life except the person in the mirror, right? I'm responsible for my life. I don't control anything that happens to me, but I control everything that I do about it. And so in the book, we talk a lot about, what are those steps? How can I make that journey of self-responsibility? And then all of that, those three things lead me to compassion. And compassion has the same three steps. I define compassion in the following way. It's the capacity for three things: the capacity to have an awareness of someone else, a mindset of wishing the best for them, and then the courage to take action. In other words, it's those same three steps of do I know them? Can I love them? And can I be responsible or take action, on behalf of them? And so that's why I organized it that way. And it's really, the book is really my own journey of self-exploration in trying to get to that place.
Mhm. Well, I just want again to reinforce to me the effectiveness and the power of your storytelling. I mean, and I won't spoil it for anyone. The opening story just had me, just gripped to me immediately. And then all of your stories were just so well done in the way you structured each of those sections. And I loved your willingness to disclose times when you weren't as effective as you might have been.
Sure.
And one of the ones that I really found quite poignant was, is it Ronan? Is that how you say his name?
Yes, I've changed everybody's name, but
Right.
yes.
But the story of this person, I thought was just a beautiful illustration of the points you were
Mhm.
making about compassion. And since you've
Mm.
just defined it for us and described the three parts, give us the abbreviated version of that
Sure,
story with Ronan and how you applied those steps.
sure. Well, it's a two-part story, and the first part is me being an employee and finding myself. Um, I had a manager once who said, "I need more from you." I'm like, "Okay, great," and I interpreted that as I'm doing an A minus job, and there's always an A plus to be had, so I just need to work harder, because he wasn't giving me any other detail, and it was so frustrating. And we finally changed managers, and the new manager came in and informed me that I was almost on a performance plan, but he decided not to do that. In other words, I was about to be fired, or I was about to be, put on a plan because I'd not been given any specific feedback from this earlier manager. So that was when I was 26 or so. Fast forward 20 years, and I'm on the other side of the desk. And Ronan is my employee. He's working in, Ireland, leading a big team, my team there. And my feedback to him, he really wanted to have a promotion to director, but he wasn't quite ready. And everybody knew that he wasn't quite ready, but we couldn't quite put our finger on it. And so my feedback to him was, you're not ready. Why? Well, your executive presence, your executive presence isn't quite there. And when he pressed a little further, I didn't have much to say to him. I couldn't quite put my finger on what it was other than you're not ready. Well, as you might imagine, Ronan got super frustrated and went back to his desk and I don't know, just got angry. And as I walked away from the call, I realized that I had done the same thing to him as happened to me 20 years earlier, with this vague feedback that there was no action plan, just this vague dissatisfaction. It's like saying, I don't like you. Well, what can I do differently? I don't know. I don't really like you. And so I was disgusted with myself. And so the tipping point then was that conversation. And for me, it required me to dig in, right? To get curious. What is it exactly? What's the behavior that I can tell Ronan to change? And some of it was based on feedback that I'd gotten from the people who were on the ground locally. They also had very loose feedback of things like, he's not quite ready. So I'd have difficult conversations with my peers and superiors that I very much needed a relationship with, right? Imagine I'm having the conversation with the country manager, or the for all of Europe, not just country manager, but regional manager, the SVP, right? And I very much needed that person to be on my side. And here I was going to confront them and basically say, look, if you can't give me specific feedback, then that doesn't count as feedback. And so all of this resulted in me digging in with all these people and eventually providing Ronan with very specific action-oriented feedback. And over time, he did make those improvements. And over time, he did get that promotion. And everybody benefited from this lesson in really compassion in a fierce kind of way.
Mm-hmm. I just think that's so powerful. And I think it illustrates issues that we see in workplaces everywhere where people aren't given feedback. Their manager avoids it, and they're left wondering, what is it specifically?
That's
And
right.
we don't frame it as compassion, though, which I thought was a really interesting perspective for you to describe it in that context. We don't
Yeah.
think of it as being compassionate when we're giving someone direct feedback.
Yeah.
And
In
yet
fact, some
it
people
is.
really get this wrong in terms of what is compassion. I had a situation, we were talking about compassion at work for years. And we had a situation where we're doing our annual performance reviews and, we're talking about people and what's going on. And we get to this one, employee. And then I asked the manager how they were doing, because in the previous review, 6 months or 12 months earlier, they were not doing well. Like they should have been put on a plan, and we'd gotten to the same point, 6 or 12 months later. And the manager was saying, I asked, well, how did the feedback go? What did you tell them? And they're like, oh, well, I haven't been giving them feedback because I was trying to be compassionate. And this changes the whole story, because then it's not a performance issue for the employee. It's a performance issue with that manager, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now the manager is to put it bluntly, in big trouble, right? Because they thought that they were being compassionate by not giving direct feedback to the employee. It's actually the worst thing they could have done, because everybody wants the truth. I shouldn't say everybody, most people want the truth, right?
Mm-hmm.
They want you to have transparency. They want you to tell you what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And most of the time, they don't want you to sugarcoat it. They want the plain facts so they can actually do something about it. And this person, in their desire to, quote, be compassionate, was withholding. And in fact, when you withhold, that's not compassion at all, because then that person continues to struggle. They're not able to do anything about it. So for us all to get on the same page of what this means is really important, because I believe that compassion is very powerful. In fact, I think most managers, most leaders don't have the courage to be compassionate leaders. It's not the other way around.
Talk a little bit more about that. Where does courage come in there? I agree with you. I just want to
Sure.
hear your perspective there.
So if you think of this definition, awareness of others, a mindset to wish the best for them, and then the courage to take action. And now point it at our customers, right? You think about our customers. Are we really acting compassionately towards them? So do we know them? Most of the time, yes, we can always do better. Do we really wish the best for them? I don't know. Are we really thinking about wishing the best for them? Are we really thinking about our customers and what would make them successful? But the third one is the hard one. It's the courage to take action. So this shows up as an example in sales. So the lack of courage, let's do it on the courage side. On the courage side, a sales leader will tell their employees, hey, look, our job is to provide long-term value. So do not sell something our customers don't need at the end of the quarter just so you can hit your quota. Okay, I can tell you that is not how I was trained when I was 26. But that is compassion, right? To do things that in the short term may not benefit the company, but in the long term, it's all about this relationship, this contract, if you will, the compassion contract you have with employees and with customers. It happens on the product side. So if you think about the internet business, security, as an example, is something that every internet company, if they weren't acting compassionately, they would just take all of your information and do whatever they wanted to with it, right? They would sell it, they would trade it, they would do whatever. But that's not good for customers. So the more compassionate thing to do is let's put security in place. Let's have the customer be totally in control of how we use their data. And of course, there's a line that there's a balance of that, and some companies do a better job for customers than others. But the really interesting thing to me is that the research actually shows that this is a better way to act. That if a company creates a balance, I'll call it compassion, creates a balance between all of their stakeholders. Yes, they're shareholders. You have to have a good business model, but creates an environment where their employees can do their best work, where they have meaning, where they have purpose, where they're taken care of, and creates long-term value for customers on purpose. Those companies are 14 times, that's 1,400% more profitable than the S&P average. 1,400% more profitable. So to me, compassion is not just a way to make myself feel better or be a good person or make the world a better place. It's actually a better way to build a business.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I so agree with you too. I'm curious because you mentioned earlier, and you really have it throughout the book, that you are a competitive person,
Yes.
striving, wanting to beat other people. And so I wondered some of your ahas along the way for making that shift from being
Yeah.
competitive to being more compassionate and taking these other stakeholders into account.
Well, for sure. And what I'd say is it's an ongoing journey, right? It's an ongoing journey. I'm a work in progress. But I think some of it, life is the best teacher, right? I call it the journey from me to we. And if you kind of make things black and white, when I'm a 15-year-old kid, I'm just thinking about me and my own achievement, my own winning, if you will. But over time, I grew up, I got married, I had kids, I became a leader, first a manager, then a leader, then a senior leader, et cetera. And you realize pretty quickly in each of those things that, in order for me to be happy, we have to be happy. In order for me to be successful, we have to be successful, right? And the bigger the organization or the more that happens, the more true that is. But if you think just in a simple relationship, your primary relationship, just think about if you focus on getting what you want 100% of the time and your own happiness 100% of the time and what you want, does that yield the best results in actually making you happy? No, it doesn't. In fact, you're probably not going to be in the relationship over time. You learn that it's about, okay, it's a balance. Yes, there's my own needs, but then there's my partner's needs. And if we really create a balance between the two, that creates, essentially contentment or happiness over time. So that was a huge lesson. And there's something else that I'm just now starting to comprehend. If I ever have a chance to do another TED Talk, this will probably be my next TED Talk. But for me, it's the balance of how do we balance our ambition with our inner peace? Right. And I always thought that they were a hard left or a hard right turn from center, kind of a black or a white choice. But now I realize that they're both necessary. It's like two sides of the same coin. And to me, there are two stories from the spiritual tradition that kind of speak to this. In the first story, the teacher and the student are together, and there's some sort of baptismal event, right? The teacher takes the student and dunks him in the water, and then continues to hold him underwater and hold him and finally, he's struggling and thrashing about and about to expire. And at the last possible moment, the teacher lifts him out of the water, and you have the moment. And later, the teacher says, when you want truth as much as you wanted air, you'll find it. Right? So to me, this is a story about desire. This is a story about doing. The other story, teacher and student are together, and after a long discourse, the teacher says something like the following. He says, when you finally let go of your desperate search, your desperate longing for truth, you'll find it. And for years, for 30 years, I thought, how can these two things exist in the same universe? Right? How is this possible? But what I realize is that there's two sides of the same coin. On one side is doing, on the other side is being, right? And it's this balance. We have to have both things. We can't just sit back and not get anything done, but we also can't be so attached to the outcome. And so we learn to focus on the process. How is this relevant to work? Of course you want to be competitive. Of course you want to meet your business plan. Of course you want to meet your number for the quarter. You're going to do everything that's humanly possible to get that done within your value set, within your company culture, within your compassion framework. But then at the end of the quarter, whatever the results are, you have to let it go. So this is where we fall short, is that I was always very good at the competitive part. It's the letting go of the result that's extraordinarily hard for me, because we put all this effort in, we want to see the result. But that's the being part. How do you just be after you've done the doing?
And as I was listening to you, I was thinking also of the flip side of that. How do I want to be in order to do?
Right.
Who do I need to show up as
right.
in approaching this action I'm about to take? So I think maybe it's a continuous circling coin.
Absolutely.
There's no
they're always
beginning or
together.
end.
They're always together.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, here's another thing let's explore, and that is the title of your book, The Full Body Yes, because it's not obvious to somebody. I mean, you can sort of get that picture, the full body yes, man, I'm all in, right?
Right.
But explain what you mean by
Sure.
that and why you gave it that title.
Sure. Well, for me, the full body yes is when you just know, right? When you just know. And for me, it's when you're aligned in all the different parts of you, right? There's the body, the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual, whatever you want to call that. Soul is what I would call it, but whatever that is to you. When they are all lined up, it's just a yes. Now, this happens all the time. It happens in low stakes environment. Like you get up in the morning and you think, okay, what am I going to have for breakfast? And you decide whatever it is, toast and eggs, or it's, yogurt and fruit. And you just know, like there's no conflict. You're just going to have it. Okay, that's the full body yes. But when it's really poignant, when it's powerful, is when you've been struggling for something that you feel has high stakes and you don't know what to do. You're torn. The gut says to do X, but the mind says to do Y, right? And you just don't know what to do. And then something will happen. Maybe you go for a walk in the woods. Maybe you're taking a shower. Something by grace or whatever, by chance happens, and you just know. And so throughout the book, I've described a number of these times in my life where something happened and I just knew that this was right. When I met my wife, I knew that she was the one. When I was interviewing for the job at LinkedIn, I woke up in the middle of the night and I just knew that I was supposed to take the job. Now, sometimes it happens like that, but I also believe that we can cultivate it, that we can go after it, that when we're stuck, there are techniques and things that we can do to go after that full body yes. And when we do have that, we have less of this tear, right? Less of the tear between the heart and the mind or the soul or whatever you want to call it. So the full body yes is when I've listened to that deepest part of me, when that deepest part of me is leading my life instead of the mind or emotion or my physical body.
And how do we slow down enough? Because I think that's a key aspect, right, of
Yeah,
listening for that is to slow down. And I'm asking this for myself as well, because
sure,
I tend to get in there doing things.
sure,
What are some practical ideas for
sure.
slowing down and paying attention and listening?
Right. Well, it starts with the physical body. Our fight or flight response, just the way we've evolved to stay alive, our fight or flight response is almost always on, right? In the old days, it was on because we needed to be safe from the crackling in the woods that might have been a saber-toothed tiger. But in today's life, our body responds in the exact same way, to an angry email from a customer or the kids making noise in the next room while we're trying to do a Zoom call. So the first part is to realize that we are animals, right? We are animals that have evolved in a certain way, and that evolution has kept us alive. Now, nobody said anything about happy. Nobody said anything about content, kept us alive. So there's this physical part that, like, okay, what's the antidote to fight or flight? All right, well, that's the mindfulness. It's the meditation. It's the breathing or prayer or whatever you do, fishing, running, whatever you do that truly calms the body. And the mind follows next, right? In the same way that our bodies have evolved this fight or flight system, our minds have developed a negativity bias. In other words, our amygdala in our brain is always searching for what's, quote, dangerous. That kept us alive, right? Don't step on the snake, don't eat the red food, all that kind of stuff. But in our current world, it's like, oh my God, look what they said in my performance review. Or here's this angry email from a customer. Or my spouse does this thing that makes me crazy. And we fixate on the 1% of our life that's, quote, wrong or dangerous. The first step is to recognize you're an animal. Like, this is human nature. We are designed, we have evolved to fixate on the 1%. And so it starts with this recognition. This is why we start with know yourself, right? And once I know myself, then I can shift. I can make a choice. I can say, am I going to do the things that continue to cause me stress? Well, why would I do that? Oh, good question. So I can do what then calms me down, calms my body, calms my mind. I can reorient, right? If my spouse is doing that one thing that makes me crazy, it's to reorient. Okay, what are the 99 things that she's doing that are amazing or neutral? And I can refocus my attention. But it starts with the slowing down. If we never give ourselves a break, we never have a chance to look at ourselves from the outside.
Mhm. That's great. Now, your book cover has this orange rhinoceros, and one of my favorite stories in the book about how you got to a full body
Yeah,
yes revolved around that. So please share that story.
sure. Happy
Wonderful.
to. Let me set the context a little bit. It was about 6 or 7 years ago, my father passed away. And I mentioned, well, maybe I didn't mention, but I'm the youngest of 5. And I grew up kind of looking for my dad's opinion, right? I was external validation, right? And he had passed away. And so my dad wasn't there to get this external validation. And, in my life, it looked very clearly like I was the top of the pyramid. I was going to have to make these decisions all on my own. There was nobody to go to. And that was very true in the situation. What was happening was my kind of most senior person on my team, the most senior leader, was leaving to take another job. And I needed to replace him. And since it was such an important role and it was so integrated into the rest of the company, we had this large team involved. We had senior VPs and country managers and people from all over the company involved in the hiring process. Very high stakes, right? And we got down to the final two candidates, an internal candidate and an external candidate. They were both great. We had done 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds of interviews. There was no more information that we were going to get. Both of them could do the job, but my interview team was split exactly half. Exactly half of these really powerful people said, oh yeah, the internal candidate is great. Not really sure about this external candidate. And the other exactly half said, oh, for sure, it's the external candidate. I don't think the internal candidate can do this job. Like, okay, well, my superpower in life is collaboration. It's getting people to work together, right? And here I knew that whatever I did, I was going to have to make the choice. There was nobody else to make the choice. And whatever I did, I run the risk of upsetting these very senior people who I wanted to have a relationship with. So I felt the strain of it because I knew that my success was very much dependent on this person's success in this role. So what was I going to do? So in contemplation one day, I'm having a conversation with the thing, whatever you call it, the divine, the universe. And I'm like, I don't know what to do. And you know what? I don't do this very often, but this time I want a sign. Like, I am asking for a sign. Let me be really clear. If it's person A, and I thought about person A, and she had long black hair, and what I imagined in my mind was long black hair tied into a bun with a butterfly pin, sealing the hair. If it's person A, that's what I'm going to see. Literally, in real life, this is what I'm going to see. And in B, I thought about this person, and they had an orange backpack that they carried all the time. If it's person B, I'm going to see an orange rhinoceros. And as soon as I thought, I'm like, what? How's this going to work? Like, how am I going to see an orange rhinoceros? It's like, fine, okay, let it go. I let it go. And so I released it, the doing and the being part. I released it. I'm like, okay, next 24 hours, I'm watching for a sign. Let's go. And then I released it. Next day, I forgot all about it. And one of the Star Wars movies, the newer Star Wars movies, had come out, and we went to see it at a Friday afternoon as a team. And I'm hanging out with my friends, my coworkers, letting kind of the stress of the day, relax around me. And there's a preview for an animated movie, and across the screen rambles an orange rhinoceros. And immediately my mind is like, wait, because it happened really fast. It's like, wait, was that orange or was that red, or kind of red, or it was like a maroon? Like, does that count? And inwardly I knew, I'm like, no, that's it. And then I checked inwardly. I'm like, okay, this is real life. Is it really this person? Is it person B? Does that feel right? And I just felt like, yeah, that feels right. I had the full body yes. And so a few days later, we announced that this person was getting the job. And they were amazing in their role. It was perfect the way it all worked out.
That's so cool. It's such a great example of, the power of our minds to put out there and really be able to create a demand, if you will,
Yeah.
and look, so we know what to pay attention to. I love that on so many levels. There's two other things I must get to with you, Scott.
Sure.
One is gratitude, because I loved what you wrote about it, the power it has, the importance it has. And I know this is a real deep passion of yours. Talk
right.
about that in terms of, why is that a superpower that all of us ought to, really focus on developing?
Sure. Well, we talked about how we're animals, right? And we have this negativity bias. So this is just our norm. We see things as negative normally. Now, to do something different, we have to kind of put our finger on the other end of the scale. Okay, well, what does that look like? Well, gratitude. It's essentially shifting from the darkness to the light. So think about with your spouse or with your team or whoever. If you only focus on the darkness, if you only focus on what they do wrong, you'll keep getting more of that. But when we shift our focus to the light, our world becomes bigger. We become happier. We become more content. I call it pothole management. There can be 1,000 miles of perfect road, but if there's one pothole in 1,000 miles, this is where our attention goes. And it's not that we're ignoring the pothole. We're not delusional. We're not saying, hey, everything's great, because that's delusion, unless it really is. because we want to fix the pothole, but we don't need to spend 99% of our time talking about it. So it takes a conscious effort to move our lives, right? So when the studies around gratitude are powerful, when people keep a gratitude journal for 8 or 10 weeks, they are measurably happier. They are measurably more optimistic, and they measurably have less physical symptoms of stress. And another really interesting thing is people who keep gratitude journals are much more likely to stick to the rest of their plans, meaning if they had a diet or an exercise plan or a health routine, they're way more likely to stick to it if they have a gratitude practice. So for me, when I'm talking to people about the one change that they could make, if you only do one thing differently, you apply gratitude, because it's a shifting of consciousness from the dark to the light. And when we focus on the light, it makes us stronger to deal with the dark.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Besides keeping a gratitude journal, what might someone do in the course of a day to
Sure.
bring that consciousness into becoming a habit?
Sure. Well, let's talk about systems to make a habit. One of my favorite books is Atomic Habits, James Clear. And my favorite quote from there is, "Our lives do not rise to the level of our goals. They fall to the level of our systems." So in other words, I could say, I want more gratitude in my life. That's a goal. That's an intention. But the truth is, nothing, nothing is going to change unless we have a system to put in place that makes it live, right? So what's a system? A system could be every Friday at noon, I'm going to send just one email or a text or a phone call to somebody in my network that shares gratitude, right? And so the first system is declaration. I'm going to do it Friday at noon. A second system is I'm going to create a calendar entry. A third system could be like, okay, if I do it once a week, I'm going to keep on my calendar, my physical calendar, a little tick box, and tick off the days that I've done it. That's 3 systems that help it live. Another system is you want more gratitude with your family. When you're having family dinner, spend some time saying, hey, what are you grateful for? Everybody gets a chance to talk. Maybe you don't force them to do it, but you give space for them to do it. You could force them to do it, and maybe have no repeats, right? Because if you say no repeats, you get into some creative territory, because you're not saying recess, or you're not saying or each other. Then you become grateful for the mundane things. Like you look at a glass of water on your desk or a bottle of water on your desk, and you're like, wow, I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful I have clean water, because whatever it is, 25 or 40% of the world does not have clean water on a regular basis. So you start to become grateful for everything. And it doesn't mean you're walking around in this state where you're not in reality. It's just that you've shifted your reality to actually be more mindful. Mindfulness is just awareness in a non-judgmental way, right? Instead of being an animal and focused on the worst thing in your life just so you can stay alive.
Such a great contrast. Well, this leads into my last question, because one of the other points you make that I just loved was looking at life happening to me, then evolving to for me, and then through me. So
Yes.
please talk about those distinctions, because I think that's a very powerful insight that my audience would love to
Yes.
hear.
Many people, especially in the victim consciousness, is life is happening to me. Poor me. All the stuff is happening, and it's happening to me. And I'm just a leaf on the water, floating down the river. Well, it's way more powerful to take responsibility, to say, no matter what's happening, no matter what is happening, I'm responsible for my response to life, right? And I develop a curiosity, because as an example, my worldview is that all of the things that happen to me, that happen in my life, are there on purpose. And if they're there on purpose, like I get curious, like what's the purpose? Now, even if you don't believe that, it's a really powerful mental shift to move from like, okay, if this was designed, for some reason, or what can I learn from it? Perhaps is a better question. What can I learn from this? How can I be a better person? And if my curiosity moves from, oh, it's just happening to me, to, ooh, how could this make me better? Then I move from being victim to player, or victim to star in my own movie. And that becomes really powerful. And then when we start to develop this relationship with life, we can start to become a co-worker, right? A co-creator. And that's when really interesting things happen. Then I believe that life starts to happen through us, that we become a channel for goodness, whatever words you want to put around that. We become a beacon of light that helps other people light their own lights. And that is when the magic happens internally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're lighting up as you're saying that. I love that word co-creating because to me that makes it very tangible. That it's not like I liked the for, but through really requires us to think about how can we participate? How can we be more proactive
That's right.
in, creating whatever it is that is happening here?
That's right.
I don't know if you're familiar with Steve Hardison. He's
I'm
a
not.
coach who is always asking his clients, given this situation, what would you like to create?
Yeah.
That's the question. And I think that's just a great place for us to end our conversation. Although I could go on a lot longer, Scott. I just love who you are and I love what you bring to the world, what you're sharing in your current focus with what you're doing. And I know that my listeners are going to want to learn more about you. So please share where
Sure.
they can connect with you and how they can get a copy of your fabulous book, Full Body Yes.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, you can find me at scottshute.com or thefullbodyyes.com. They go to the same place. And feel free to reach out to me. You can contact me through there or through LinkedIn. The book is available everywhere through online, Amazon, or places like Barnes and Noble or independent bookstores. And the types of things I do in the world, if you're interested in partnering, is I help individuals and companies basically become more conscious. We do that through speaking and workshops, but also executive coaching or consulting on culture. And so we're trying to, change work from the inside out. And I'd happy to partner with you.
That's great. Thank you, Scott. Thank you for being the remarkable human being you are
Thank
and
you.
all that you are contributing to shine your light in this world. And I love your focus on inside out and your emphasis on mindfulness and compassion. I appreciate you.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for tuning into my podcast. Now head over to growstrongleaders.com and check out our 2 books, Connect with Your Team and Peer Coaching Made Simple. While you're there, download the free facilitator guide to find out how to implement our unique peer coaching system. Until next time, I'm Meredith Bell.